my attention. So like I said, I hope this helps, and this is how I would teach. And then slowly move your hand in a narrower and narrower field, so not a big thing, but then it gets littler and littler. And then magic happens, and you suddenly have vibrato. What I found for me is that I would either tighten up my whole arm because I was trying to stay in this narrow range, or I would cling on really hard, clamp it down with finger and thumb and get my arm flapping in the breeze. And both of these did not make a very good vibrato. There's two things with vibrato that we have to have, and one of them is this arm motion, and the other is cling, which is that the fingers somehow have to stick on the fingerboard. And I don't think that most people discuss this much, and this is where I focused a lot of my attention. So like I said, I hope this helps, and this is how I would teach it if I were a teacher. So there's two things that we need, as we said. We need arm motion and we need cling. The best way to think of it is that we want to have arm motion, which is driving the vibrato. The wrist and the hand move sympathetically. The fingers are pulled back and forth by the arms. They're not moving like this. And the tips of the fingers cling onto the cello. So there's no unnecessary tension in the hand and the arm. So to start off with, I want you to put your bow down. Start on either the G or the D string, whichever feels more comfortable to you. This is a little easier if your skin is not very dry. Start with the third and fourth fingers together. The third is going to be my helper finger for the fourth finger vibrato. It's nice if you can have a helper finger. It helps you get twice the cling. I've got two fingers that are working on clinging instead of just one if I tried to do vibrato with just one finger like this. So I've got two fingers together where possible, obviously not on the first finger. And think about sinking into the fingerboard. Think about jumping off of the fingerboard. Your hand is here in a relaxed position. You're going to move your arm down and feel it cling into the fingerboard. Feel your fingers sink into the fingerboard. Feel like you're bouncing up. Bounce, bounce, bounce. So when I'm down, I can feel a certain amount of tension. My fingers are clinging into the fingerboard, onto the fingerboard. When I'm up, my hand is relaxed. So it's tension, release, tension, release. During this time, my thumb is loose under the fingerboard. My thumb isn't doing anything at all. Some people can rest it lightly on the fingerboard if they want, or it can just be hanging in space. My first and second fingers are relaxed. So just boing, boing, boing. And your hand will slide a little at first. You can even try and see what it feels like by adding a little helper finger if you want, just to get that feeling. And you might feel like you're really pulling hard at the bottom to get enough force to cling. And don't worry too much about this, or if your finger slides a bit. We're just trying to get a basic feel for cling, relax, cling, relax. You can try it out with other fingers. Cling, relax, cling, relax. So if your fingers are feeling really stiff, if you're trying this and they just won't bend, like see how the first knuckle bends, the second knuckle bends. If they feel stiff, think about yourself jumping and landing as if it was your feet. When your feet hit the ground, in this case your fingertips are your feet, your knees are just going to bend. So you can try this on its own. Just try. Now I'm using almost no weight at all, and I'm just allowing my fingers to completely collapse. This is extreme, but this is the kind of feeling that you want to get. So you jump down, relax up. The purpose of this exercise is to prevent you from thinking about hitting the ceiling, as I call it. So if you've got tension this way and you got tension this way, because you're pulling to the maximum at the top of the stroke, pushing down max, pulling up max, you're going to have tension at both sides of the stroke, and you're going to have too much tension in your hand. So you need to think of it as tension release with each one. It helps for cling to think about using more of the fleshy part of the finger and not the fingertip, especially if you tend to play very much on the tips of your finger. It'll help if you think about using a little more flesh. It'll give you a little bit more to cling with. but don't let the first knuckles collapse backwards like this. Move your fingers in the air and think about the muscles that you're using to move them like this. You definitely don't want to get a walking vibrato like this where I'm pulling with my fingers to move up and down. Your fingers should not be moving with their muscles like this. They should be moving, but only because the arm is moving. Now if you want to, at this point you can add the bow, but we're still going to just do one bounce at a time. So and try it on each finger. When I start going faster, I'm not going to be able to think each time about cling, release, cling, release, cling, release. But I can think cling, 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 or down, 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 down. So remember with this, the arm moves, tip of fingers cling, and everything else is relaxed. Now we're going to think about moving into multiple bounces of the finger. Keep thinking pulse, release, but there's no time to think those words during each stroke. So first start with one stroke. I'm thinking down, down, bounce, bounce. And I'm thinking in between each one, is my hand relaxed? You might need to take a little time to think about this. Is my hand relaxed and just in a normal position, like I can play and move off to another finger? But then when you feel comfortable with that, try 2 or 3. And still think about each time sinking into the fingerboard and relaxing. When you get used to this, you can start thinking about moving into continuously vibrating like this. When you do, think about groups of 3. I find this to be really helpful. Think 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 with a little emphasis. You should even be able to hear it at the beginning of each one. Obviously you're not going to use this permanently, but I find it a really good reminder to just keep my hand in the right position and not go off into anything that you don't want to have happening. Remember that vibrato is not learned in a day, and one thing that surprised me that I found was asking professionals what they think of their vibrato, and they all wish that they had better vibrato, everybody that I've spoken with. And a lot of times they'll do tricks like they know they don't like their 4th finger vibrato in this position, so they'll switch to a 2nd finger vibrato because they think it sounds better. There's always more room for improvement. This is not something that you'll get in a day. This is not something that when you get it, it's just done and you don't have to think about it anymore. Just like all of your technique, it continues to grow and change. Okay, this is the view from the scroll standing behind somebody. I find this really helpful. Find someone that you like their vibrato, such as your teacher, and ask them to do vibrato like I'm doing now. Do 4th finger vibrato. This is easier to see in real life, but hopefully I can give you a good idea of it. And you'll see that my arm is moving up and down, and it just looks like my hand is moving fairly straight up and down. Then ask them to switch to 1st finger. And if you notice, you'll see that the hand is turning a lot more. You can see this part near the 4th finger coming up. Unlike with vibrating on the 4th finger where you don't see the hand moving like that. So there's a big difference between the 1st and the 4th finger. You'll also notice that a lot of professionals, when they're in 1st position doing 1st finger vibrato, that their elbow comes up in the air. There'll be many and minor adjustments in your arm and shoulder when you're using different fingers in different places. Don't try to change these, just watch them and allow them to happen. Each finger will feel slightly different. Lower positions feel different from higher. Obviously thumb is different, and each string will feel different. The last thing I'd like to talk about is thumb position vibrato, which we haven't talked about yet. When you get into thumb position, things change quite a bit, and rather than your arm moving in basically this kind of direction, it moves slightly on an angle, kind of about like this. You can see that I'm moving kind of in the direction of my bow a little bit, maybe a little straighter, but certainly not this. You'd have to twist your arm all the way around. So if you think about vibrating on an angle like this, I'm exaggerating quite a bit now, it makes it a lot easier. And then you can think about using the same exercises that we used already. You can just I'm still thinking 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And notice that my thumb is in the air. A lot of people teach that the thumb should be down. I can do it with the thumb down, but for me it's slightly easier to have the thumb up in the air. This is the end of the basics of how to do cling, how to get vibrato. Keep thinking about having everything being relaxed and only having the arm move and the tip of the fingers cling, and everything else is just reacting to the movement of the arm. I'm going to make a second video also with some exercises